For 15 long years, I watched my little girl live in unbearable pain. We saw countless doctors, tried every treatment we could find, and spent thousands of dollars searching for answers. Nothing worked. Then, on what seemed like an ordinary Sunday, something happened that no doctor could explain. And my daughter's migraines disappeared. Today, more than a year later, they still haven't returned. If you're believing God for a miracle, or you're caring for someone who is suffering, don't skip this testimony. It might be the encouragement you need today. Hello everyone, my name is Juliana Peterson. Today I want to share one of the greatest miracles my family has ever experienced. This isn't a story I heard from someone else. It's the story of my daughter Mitchell. When Mitchell was just 7 years old, while she was in second grade, she began suffering from severe migraines. At first, we thought they were just ordinary headaches. We had no idea that what started as occasional pain would become a 15-year battle that would affect nearly every part of her life. There were moments when we wondered if she would ever know what it felt like to live without pain. But God had a plan, even when we couldn't see it. Before I continue, if this testimony encourages you, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs hope today. I'd also love to hear from you in the comments. What breakthrough are you believing God for? My family and I will be praying for you. Now, let me tell you how this incredible journey began. Mitchell was only 7 years old when everything changed. I still remember the afternoon she came home from school holding her head. She quietly dropped her backpack by the front door and walked toward me. "Mom," she whispered, her voice trembling. I immediately noticed something was wrong. "What's the matter, sweetheart?" I asked, kneeling beside her. She pressed both hands against her forehead. "My head hurts so much." At first, I wasn't overly concerned. Children get headaches sometimes. I thought maybe she hadn't had enough water, or perhaps she'd been playing too hard during recess. I gave her some water, let her rest in her bedroom, and expected she'd be back to her cheerful self by dinner. But she wasn't. That evening, she barely touched her food. The lights in the dining room seemed to bother her. She covered her eyes. "Mom, can we turn the lights off? They're hurting my eyes." I exchanged a worried glance with my husband. This didn't feel like an ordinary headache. A few days later, it happened again, then again, and again. Within months, what we thought were occasional headaches had become severe migraines that completely disrupted our little girl's life. Some mornings, Mitchell would wake up excited for school, only to be curled up in bed an hour later. She would whisper through tears, "Mom, I can't go today." Watching your child cry because of pain you can't take away is one of the hardest things a parent can experience. Her teachers tried to be understanding. One afternoon, her second-grade teacher called me. "Mrs. Peterson," she said gently, "Mitchell is such a bright student, but she's missing so much class. We're worried about her." I sighed. "We're worried too. We're trying to find out what's causing all of this." As the years passed, the migraines became part of our family's routine. Birthday parties were canceled at the last minute. Family vacations often ended with Mitchell lying in a dark hotel room while everyone else tried to enjoy the day. Holiday celebrations became unpredictable. Sometimes we'd be halfway through Christmas dinner before she'd quietly excuse herself. "I'm sorry," she'd say softly. "It's starting again." Then she'd disappear into the darkest room in the house, pulling the curtains shut while the rest of us celebrated without her. It broke my heart every single time. As Mitchell entered her teenage years, the emotional burden became just as heavy as the physical pain. One evening, after another migraine forced her to miss a school dance she'd been looking forward to for months, she sat on the edge of her bed with tears streaming down her face. She looked at me and asked a question no mother ever wants to hear. "Mom, is this just going to be my life forever?" I wrapped my arms around her. Fighting back my own tears, I whispered, "No, sweetheart. We're not giving up. We'll keep searching until we find an answer." And we meant it. Over the next 15 years, we searched everywhere for help. We visited pediatricians who referred us to neurologists. Neurologists sent us to headache specialists. Mitchell endured MRI scans, blood tests, eye examinations, neurological evaluations, and countless appointments that seemed to blend together. Each new doctor gave us fresh hope. Each new treatment made us think, maybe this is finally the one. She tried prescription medications, preventive medicines, pain relievers, vitamin supplements. We eliminated certain foods from her diet. We kept detailed migraine journals, recording everything she ate, how she slept, the weather, stress levels, and anything else that might reveal a pattern. Our kitchen slowly filled with notebooks, medication bottles, appointment cards, and medical reports. Every small improvement felt like a breakthrough. Sometimes weeks would pass with fewer migraines, and we'd celebrate cautiously. Then, without warning, they would come back, sometimes even worse than before. After one particularly difficult appointment, Mitchell sat quietly in the car as I started the engine. Finally, she broke the silence. "Mom? Yes? What if they never figure this out?" I reached over and held her hand. "Then we'll keep believing. We'll keep looking for answers. And we'll keep praying. You're not fighting this alone." She nodded, though I could see the exhaustion in her eyes. By the time Mitchell reached her 20s, migraines had become something she expected rather than feared. But as her mother, I refused to accept that this would be the rest of her story. Deep inside my heart, I still believed that one day, somehow, everything could change. By the time Mitchell was in her 20s, 15 years had passed since that first migraine. 15 years of appointments, 15 years of prescriptions, 15 years of hoping the next treatment would finally be the answer. Some days were manageable, others were unbearable. But through it all, one thing never changed. Our family kept praying. Every morning before Mitchell left for work, I would quietly place my hand on her shoulder. "Lord," I'd pray, "you've carried us this far. Please carry us a little farther." Mitchell would smile, even on the difficult days. "Thanks, Mom," she'd say softly. "I know God hears us, even if I don't understand why I'm still waiting." Those words stayed with me, because if I'm being honest, there were moments when I didn't understand either. I believed God could heal her. I just didn't know why the answer hadn't come. Then, last year, everything began to change. It was an ordinary Sunday morning. There was nothing unusual about the day. Mitchell and I got ready for church like we always did. As we drove there, I glanced over at her. "How are you feeling today?" I asked. She gave a small smile. "Actually, not too bad." I smiled back. "I'm thankful for every good day." Neither of us had any idea that this day would become one our family would never forget. During the service, our pastor preached a message about trusting God while waiting. He spoke about people in the Bible who waited years to see God's promises fulfilled. Then he said something that felt as though it was spoken directly to us. Just because God hasn't answered yet, doesn't mean he isn't working. Waiting is never wasted when your faith remains in him. I felt tears fill my eyes. I looked over at Mitchell. She was listening intently, her eyes fixed on the pastor. When the sermon ended, the pastor stepped forward again. "If you're believing God for healing," he said gently, "whether it's physical, emotional, or spiritual, I invite you to come forward. We want to pray with you today." The sanctuary grew quiet. People slowly began walking toward the front. I looked at Mitchell. She looked back at me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she quietly said, "Mom, I think I should go." I squeezed her hand. "Go, sweetheart. I'll be right here praying with you." Mitchell walked toward the front of the church. There was no spotlight, no loud music, no dramatic atmosphere, just people standing together in faith. A prayer team member smiled warmly at her. "What would you like us to pray for?" the woman asked. Mitchell answered simply, "I've had migraines for 15 years. I'm asking God to heal me." The woman gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Let's pray together." They bowed their heads. The prayer wasn't long. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't filled with shouting. It was quiet, simple, sincere. Mitchell closed her eyes and whispered her own prayer. "Lord, I've waited a long time. If it's your will, please heal me. But no matter what happens today, I still choose to trust you." When the prayer ended, She thanked the prayer team and walked back to where I was sitting. I searched her face, wondering if she had experienced something extraordinary. She simply smiled. "How do you feel?" I whispered. She shrugged gently. "I don't know, Mom. I just have peace." I wrapped my arm around her as we stood for the closing worship song. There had been no dramatic miracle on the platform. No one announced that she had been healed. The service ended just like any other Sunday. We greeted a few friends, walked to the parking lot, and drove home. To anyone watching, it would have looked like an ordinary day, but neither of us realized that the quiet prayer Mitchell had offered that morning was about to become the turning point in a 15-year journey. That evening, after we arrived home, everything seemed completely normal. Mitchell changed into comfortable clothes while I started preparing dinner. The house was quiet. Nothing felt unusual. There were no flashes of light, no overwhelming emotions, no dramatic moment that would make us think something extraordinary had happened. As I stirred a pot on the stove, I heard Mitchell walk into the kitchen. She stood there for a few seconds without saying anything. When I turned around, she was looking at me with a puzzled expression. "Mom?" she said softly. I smiled. "Yes, sweetheart?" She hesitated, almost as if she was afraid to say it out loud. Then she quietly said, "I don't have the headache anymore." I looked at her for a moment. Part of me wanted to celebrate. Another part of me remembered all the times we'd thought the migraines were finally gone, only for them to come back a day or two later. So I walked over, held both of her hands, and smiled gently. "I'm so thankful to hear that," I said. "Let's just keep trusting God one day at a time." Mitchell nodded. "I know, I don't want to get my hopes up either." That night, before we went to bed, I peeked into her room. "How are you feeling now?" I asked. She smiled. "Still no headache," I whispered. "Thank you, Lord." The next morning, I expected the familiar words I had heard for years. "Mom, it's starting again," but they never came. Instead, Mitchell walked into the kitchen smiling. "Good morning." I looked at her in surprise. "How's your head?" She laughed. "Still fine." One day became 3. 3 days became a week. Every morning I found myself asking the same question. "Mitchell, how are you feeling today?" And every single time, she answered with a smile. "I'm still okay, Mom." After the first month, we both started noticing something we hadn't experienced in years. The bottle of migraine medication on the kitchen counter hadn't been touched. One evening, Mitchell picked it up and stared at it. Then she looked at me. "Mom, I don't think I've taken one of these in weeks." I smiled, my eyes filling with tears. "You're right." She gently placed the bottle back in the cabinet. For the first time in 15 years, it wasn't something she depended on. The weeks turned into months. 3 months passed, then 6. Every milestone felt almost unbelievable. One afternoon, Mitchell came home from work with the biggest smile on her face. She dropped her purse on the table and said, "Mom, do you realize something?" I looked up. "What is it?" She laughed. "I made plans with my friends this weekend, and for the first time, I didn't wonder if a migraine would make me cancel." I couldn't hold back my tears anymore. I wrapped my arms around her. "I've prayed for this day for so long." She hugged me tightly. Me too. Life slowly began to look different. There were no more emergency visits because the pain had become unbearable. No more last-minute cancellations. No more spending entire afternoons locked inside a dark bedroom, waiting for the pain to ease. No more living in fear of when the next migraine would strike. Instead, Mitchell began enjoying the simple things she'd missed for so many years. She went out with friends without worrying about bright lights. She attended family gatherings without quietly slipping away to lie down. She could make plans for the future without wondering if chronic pain would interrupt them. Then came the milestone that truly took my breath away. More than a year had passed. Not one migraine. Not one emergency room visit. Not one day hidden away in a dark room. Not one dose of migraine medication. One evening, as we sat together on the back porch watching the sun set, Mitchell looked at me with tears in her eyes. "Mom," she said quietly, I don't even remember what it feels like to have a migraine anymore." I reached over and held her hand. With tears streaming down my face, I looked up toward the sky and whispered, "Thank you, Lord. After 15 years, thank you." In that quiet moment, my heart was filled with a gratitude that words could never fully express. As I look back on everything our family went through, there are still moments when it doesn't seem real. Sometimes I'll see Mitchell laughing with friends, making plans for the weekend, or simply enjoying a bright, sunny day without pain, and I have to remind myself that this is the same little girl who spent so much of her childhood hiding in dark rooms because even the smallest amount of light was unbearable. 15 years. That's a long time to wait for an answer. People often ask me the same question. "Juliana, how do you explain what happened?" I always smile before I answer. I can't explain it medically. I'm not a doctor. I'm not here to argue with medical science. In fact, I'm deeply grateful for every pediatrician, neurologist, headache specialist, nurse, and healthcare professional who cared for Mitchell over those 15 years. They did everything they could to help her, and we appreciate every effort they made. But I can only tell you what our family experienced. After 15 years of chronic migraines, after countless appointments, after medications, after tests, after tears, after prayers, my daughter has now lived for more than a year without a single migraine. To me, that is nothing short of God's faithfulness. One evening not long ago, Mitchell and I were sitting together with cups of tea, reflecting on everything we had been through. She looked at me and smiled. "Mom," she said, "do you remember when I asked you if this was going to be my life forever?" I nodded. I remember every word. She reached over and held my hand. "Thank you for never giving up on me. And thank you for never giving up on praying for me." Tears filled my eyes. I squeezed her hand and replied, "Sweetheart, there were days when I was tired, days when I didn't understand why we were still waiting, but I never believed God had forgotten you." Mitchell smiled through tears. Neither did he. If you're watching this today, perhaps you're in your own season of waiting. Maybe you've been praying for healing. Maybe you're believing for restoration. Maybe someone you love is facing a difficult diagnosis. Or perhaps you've started to wonder if your prayers are making any difference at all. I want to encourage you from the bottom of my heart. Please don't lose hope. If you're under a doctor's care, continue seeking medical treatment. Keep taking your medications as prescribed. Keep attending your appointments. Keep looking after your health. Faith and responsible medical care are not enemies. They can walk hand in hand. But if faith is part of your life, don't stop praying. Don't assume that because the answer hasn't come yet, God isn't listening. Sometimes the waiting season is longer than we ever imagined. Ours certainly was. There were moments when 15 years felt like forever. Yet looking back now, I can see that God never abandoned us, even during the silence. His timing wasn't our timing, but His faithfulness never failed. Today, whenever I watch Mitchell walk out the front door with a smile, free from the fear that once controlled her life, my heart overflows with gratitude. Her story reminds me that hope is never wasted, prayer is never wasted, faith is never wasted. Sometimes the answer comes quickly, sometimes it takes years. For us, it took 15 years, but when it came, it changed everything. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to our family's story. If this testimony encouraged you, please share it with someone who may need hope today. And if God has done something wonderful in your life, I'd love for you to share your testimony in the comments. Your story may be the encouragement someone else has been praying for. Thank you again for being here. God bless you.